Here is your complete part 1, full story, for a YouTube audience. A single dad went to dinner with a billionaire neighbor, then she told her parents, "He's my boyfriend." The first time Michael Carter walked into the grand dining room of the billionaire mansion, he nearly turned around and left. The crystal chandeliers hanging above him probably cost more than his old pickup truck. The polished marble floors reflected the soft lights like a mirror. Expensive paintings covered the walls, and people in elegant clothes quietly talked while waiters moved through the room carrying silver trays. Michael looked down at his worn jacket and the inexpensive shoes he had owned for nearly 5 years. His 7-year-old daughter, Grace, squeezed his hand tightly beside him. Then, before he could even find the courage to speak, the billionaire woman standing near the staircase smiled at her parents and calmly said, "He's my boyfriend." The entire room became silent. Michael nearly stopped breathing. Before we continue, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the idea that one moment can completely change a person's life, please like this video, share it with someone you love, comment where you are watching from, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories. Just 3 months earlier, Michael's life had looked completely different. He lived in a small rental house in Portland, Oregon, with his daughter Grace. Since his wife Rebecca had passed away from an illness 4 years earlier, Michael had dedicated every part of his life to raising his daughter alone. He worked as a mechanic at a local repair shop, often taking extra shifts just to pay rent, school supplies, and medical bills. His life was simple, difficult, and lonely. Every morning he woke before sunrise, made breakfast for Grace, took her to school, worked long hours, and returned home exhausted. Despite the hardships, Grace remained the light of his life. Her laughter filled the tiny house, and her drawings covered nearly every wall. But everything changed when the repair shop suddenly closed after the owner declared bankruptcy. At 40 years old, Michael found himself unemployed. The savings he had carefully built disappeared within weeks. Bills piled up on the kitchen table. The landlord began asking questions. The old truck needed repairs. Some nights Michael skipped dinner so Grace could have enough food. Yet he never complained. Every morning he put on his cleanest shirt, dropped Grace at school, and spent hours searching for work. One rainy afternoon, while struggling to unload groceries from his truck, he met his new neighbor. Her name was Victoria Hayes. She had recently moved into the large modern house across the street. Expensive cars arrived regularly, security vehicles occasionally parked outside, and nobody in the neighborhood seemed to know much about her. Michael assumed she was simply another wealthy executive. What he did not know was that Victoria was one of the youngest billionaire business owners in the country, having inherited and expanded her family's technology company. Their first meeting was simple. One grocery bag tore apart, sending cans and vegetables rolling across the wet sidewalk. Before Michael could pick them up, Victoria knelt beside him and helped collect everything. Grace immediately began talking to her. Within minutes, the little girl was laughing. Over the following weeks, Victoria often stopped to speak with Grace after school. She brought books, art supplies, and sometimes homemade cookies. Unlike many wealthy people Michael had seen on television, she never acted superior. She listened. She asked questions. She noticed things. One evening she discovered Michael repairing his own truck under a streetlight because he could not afford a mechanic. Another day she noticed him quietly calculating bills at the kitchen table. She never mentioned his struggles. Instead, she simply became their friend. Grace adored her. For the first time in years, Michael found himself smiling again. Still, he kept his distance. The differences between their worlds seemed impossible to cross. Victoria lived in luxury while he struggled to buy groceries. Then one afternoon, Victoria surprised him. She invited him and Grace to dinner at her parents' estate outside the city. Michael immediately refused. He did not own a suit. He had no money. He feared embarrassment. But Grace begged him to go. She had already picked out her favorite dress. Reluctantly, Michael agreed. The drive to the estate felt longer than it really was. The enormous gates opened slowly, revealing a mansion surrounded by gardens, fountains, and rows of lights. Michael felt completely out of place. Victoria greeted them warmly. Grace ran toward her immediately. Inside the house, Michael met Victoria's parents, Richard and Eleanor Hayes. They were polite but distant. Their expressions revealed obvious confusion about why an unemployed mechanic and his daughter had been invited. Throughout dinner, Michael spoke very little. He worried about saying the wrong thing. He worried about embarrassing Grace. He worried about disappointing Victoria. Then Eleanor finally asked her daughter why these guests were so important. That was the moment Victoria calmly looked at her parents and said, "He's my boyfriend." Silence covered the room. Michael nearly dropped his fork. Her parents stared at her. Even Grace looked surprised. Victoria continued speaking. She explained that wealth had surrounded her entire life, but very few people had ever treated her like an ordinary person. Most people wanted money, status, or influence. Michael wanted nothing. He had never asked for help. He had never tried to impress her. He simply loved his daughter and worked hard despite every hardship. For the first time in years, Victoria said she had met someone whose kindness was stronger than his circumstances. Michael sat speechless. The truth was that they had never even discussed a relationship. After dinner, he finally asked her why she had said it. Victoria smiled. She admitted that perhaps she had spoken from her heart before asking permission. She confessed that watching him care for Grace, sacrifice for his family, and continue fighting despite failure had changed her understanding of success. Over the next several weeks, their relationship slowly developed. It was not easy. Newspapers discovered the story. Social media criticized them. People accused Michael of chasing money. Others claimed Victoria had lost her mind. Some of her business associates openly disapproved. But Michael continued being exactly who he had always been. He attended Grace's school events. He searched for work. He repaired neighbors' vehicles. He treated Victoria no differently than before. Eventually, Richard Hayes decided to spend time with Michael privately. The billionaire father expected to discover hidden motives. Instead, he found a man who spoke proudly about his daughter, his late wife, and his dreams of simply providing a stable life. Michael never asked about money. He never discussed inheritance. He never requested favors. One afternoon, Richard visited Michael's small home and saw Grace's drawings covering the walls. He saw repaired furniture. He saw unpaid bills. He saw a father doing everything possible for his child. That day changed him. Several weeks later, Richard offered Michael a management position within one of the family's automotive companies. Michael initially refused because he feared accepting charity. Richard explained that it was not charity. It was opportunity. Michael accepted. Years of experience and honesty quickly made him successful. Employees respected him because he understood hard work. Meanwhile, Victoria became increasingly close to Grace. The little girl finally experienced something she had missed for years, a mother figure. Their home slowly filled with laughter again. The pain of the past did not disappear, but hope finally returned. 1 year later, Michael stood once again inside the Hayes estate. This time he wore a suit. This time he stood proudly. This time he was not a guest. He was family. In front of friends, relatives, and employees, Victoria and Michael announced their engagement. Grace stood between them holding flowers. As tears filled her eyes, she whispered that her mother in heaven would be happy. Before we reach the ending, please leave a comment below saying, "Kindness changes lives," if you believe that one act of compassion can completely change someone's future. Years earlier, Michael had lost nearly everything. He lost his job. He lost his confidence. He nearly lost hope. But he never lost his kindness. And in the end, it was not money, status, or wealth that changed his life. It was a neighbor who noticed his pain. It was a little girl who trusted her. It was a billionaire woman who saw value where others only saw struggle. If this story touched your heart, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps these emotional stories reach more people who may need hope, encouragement, and a reminder that love often appears when life seems darkest. Because sometimes the poorest person in the room carries the richest heart. And sometimes a single father walking into a mansion discovers that he was never invited because of who he was. He was invited because of who he had always been.